Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really going to push ourselves to think differently as we explore some unique perspectives on abundance, consciousness, and societal shifts.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. We'll be unpacking ideas about the nature of reality and how much our beliefs can actually shape our experiences.
Definitely. And I think a good place to start is with this intriguing story about someone asking how a tree would experience having a word spray painted on it.
Interesting. The tree, like symbolizing this natural interconnectedness, is suddenly marked by a human word, representing our impact, our intention.
It's a powerful image.
Yeah.
And the answer given is that, well, it depends on many factors, but it brings up this idea that even things we might perceive as negative can be like mirrors, reflecting our own internal beliefs back to us.
I like that. So it challenges us to look beyond just the surface level, right? To understand the motivations and beliefs behind actions, even if they seem negative.
Exactly. And maybe even our own reactions too.
Yeah.
Like, are we reacting just on that surface level, or are we taking the time to understand the deeper meaning behind things?
That's a great point. I think we've all been there reacting without really understanding the whole picture, which, actually leads perfectly into the next idea
Yeah.
about finding unity in a polarized world.
Oh, for sure. It feels like everywhere you look these days, it's us versus them. But the source material we're looking at suggests that this overfocus on differences can actually keep us from seeing our shared values.
Right. So instead of getting caught up in those divisions, it's about trying to understand the deeper needs and desires that drive different viewpoints.
Because maybe, at the core, we're not all that different, right?
Yeah, maybe we all want the same basic things like security, connection, meaning. It's just that we express those needs in different ways.
That makes a lot of sense. And maybe by focusing on those shared needs, we can start to build bridges instead of walls.
Absolutely. I think it's worth asking ourselves in our own lives, have we ever been in a disagreement where there was actually some common ground beneath the surface? Could focusing on that shared ground have helped us find a solution or at least understand each other better?
Hmm, that's a really good question to think about. It reminds me of how social media can sometimes feel like just a giant echo chamber of negativity.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's easy to get sucked into that. And the source material points out how algorithms can actually reinforce that negativity, creating these echo chambers where we only hear what we already agree with.
And that can make it even harder to see other perspectives, right? Like you start
Yeah.
scrolling through your feed and it feels like everyone is arguing all the time and everything is just bad news.
Yeah, for sure. So the question is, are we using social media as a tool for connection and growth, or are we just letting it contribute to the negativity?
Right. It's about being mindful of how we're using it and maybe even making a conscious effort to seek out diverse viewpoints.
Exactly. Because even though there's a lot of negativity out there, there's also a lot of good happening too. It's
Hmm.
about choosing where we focus our attention.
I love that. Choosing where we focus our attention. It's like we have this power to shape our own experience, even in a world that can feel pretty chaotic. And this actually connects to another interesting idea from the source material about how our consciousness expands as we grow and evolve.
Right. The idea is that as we expand our consciousness, we become more aware of both sides of polarity, not just the ones we prefer or agree with.
So it's like we're becoming more aware of the complexities of life, the nuances, that things aren't always black and white, right or wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be a challenging process, but it's also how we grow. It's like, think about a time when your perspective on something changed dramatically. Maybe you learned new information or you had an experience that challenged your previous beliefs. That's your consciousness expanding.
Wow, that's such a great way to think about it. Like we're constantly evolving and our awareness is evolving right along with us. And speaking of expanding our awareness, there's this really interesting suggestion about exploring sound frequencies, particularly for enhancing meditation practice.
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating stuff. They specifically mention the Schumann resonance, which is associated with the Earth's electromagnetic field. It's like the idea is that tapping into that frequency can help us feel more grounded and connected.
I've actually never tried meditating with sound frequencies before, but it definitely sounds intriguing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, everything vibrates at a specific frequency. And when two things vibrate at the same frequency, they create resonance. Like, it's how a tuning fork can cause another tuning fork to vibrate without even touching it.
Hmm.
So, if the Schumann resonance is like the frequency of Earth, it's not that crazy to think it could have an impact on us.
That's wild. It really makes you think about all those unseen connections that exist and how we might be able to tap into them. Like, what if we could actually tune ourselves to the frequency of the earth?
Right. And it raises a really interesting question for everyone. Could exploring sound frequencies actually enhance your own meditation practice? Like, it's definitely something worth experimenting with.
For sure. It's a whole new world to explore.
Hmm.
And it also reminds me of this other powerful concept that really resonated with me, the idea of abundance beyond just money.
Yeah, that's such an important point because we often get so caught up in thinking about abundance as purely financial, but it's so much more than that.
Right. It's like we limit our understanding of abundance to just one form.
Hmm.
But the source material suggests that it can show up as gifts, synchronicities, even challenges that lead to growth.
Exactly. Like, there's a story about someone who wants to move to a new location, but feels stuck because of their finances. But they're so focused on what they don't have that they're missing all the other forms of abundance that could help them achieve their goal.
I know. It's like sometimes we get so caught up in what we lack that we forget to appreciate everything we already have.
Yeah, totally. And that brings up a really important question for everyone listening. What forms of abundance are we overlooking in our own lives? How can we expand our definition and open ourselves up to those new possibilities?
It's almost like putting on blinders, right? Like we only see what we think we lack instead of seeing all the good that's already there.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads us to another big idea, this concept of shifting realities.
Ooh, now we're getting into the really mind-bending stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so explain this to me. Are we saying that we can just snap our fingers and change our whole lives?
Well, not quite. It's not necessarily about making those huge dramatic shifts overnight. It's more about understanding that our reality is actually pretty fluid and always evolving, and that our beliefs and choices play a big role in shaping our experience.
Okay, so it's not about forcing things to happen, but about understanding that we have this agency, this ability to influence our own reality, even if it's in more subtle ways.
Exactly. It's not that we're just passive observers in our lives, but that we're active participants, co-creating our own experience.
That's a powerful idea. And it actually raises another question. If we have this power to shape our reality, why do some people seem stuck in those negative patterns? Like, why don't they just shift to a better reality?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's important to remember that we all have our own unique journeys and timelines. What might seem negative from the outside could actually be a necessary step in someone's growth. Like sometimes we have to go through the mud to get to the flowers, right?
Oh, for sure. It's about trusting the process and remembering that everyone is on their own path. And speaking of trusting the process, let's talk about this concept of trusting the flow of life.
I love that because it's so easy to get caught up in trying to control everything, to force things to happen the way we think they should. But what if we just surrendered to the flow, trusted that there's a bigger plan unfolding?
Yeah, like what if we let go of that need to control every little detail and just allowed things to unfold naturally?
Exactly, because, there might be a greater intelligence at play, a universal flow that's guiding us towards our highest good, even when we can't see it.
That makes sense, but how do we actually do that?
Hmm.
How do we let go of that need to control and just trust?
It's definitely a practice, and it takes time. But I think it starts with becoming aware of our thoughts and beliefs, identifying where we're clinging to control, and then making a conscious choice to surrender.
So it's about noticing those moments when we're resisting the flow and then making a choice to let go.
Right. And I think things like meditation and spending time in nature can really help with that. Like, they allow us to quiet our minds and connect with that inner wisdom that already knows what's best for us.
It sounds so peaceful, but also challenging, especially in a world that's constantly telling us to hustle and strive and control everything.
It is a challenge, but the rewards are pretty incredible. When we can truly trust the flow, we open ourselves up to a life of greater ease, joy, and abundance.
I love that. And it actually reminds me of a story shared in the source material about someone who was struggling financially. They were so focused on what they didn't have that they were actually blocking the flow of abundance from coming into their lives.
Yeah, and that happens so often. We get so fixated on our desired outcome that we forget to trust the process and allow things to unfold naturally.
So instead of focusing on what we lack, what if we shifted our attention to all the good that's already present in our lives?
Exactly. And that's where gratitude comes in. When we can focus on what we're grateful for, it opens us up to receive even more abundance. It's like we're telling the universe, hey, I'm ready for more of this good stuff.
I love that. More of that good stuff. And speaking of good stuff, let's talk about the power of our imagination.
Yes. This is where things get really exciting because our imagination is like this incredible blueprint, this creative force that shapes the energy around us.
Wait, so you're saying that what we imagine can actually influence our reality?
Absolutely. When we imagine something clearly and with emotion, we're sending a powerful signal to the universe. We're essentially attracting experiences and opportunities that align with our vision.
That's wild. But what about people who say that imagination is just fantasy, that it's not grounded in reality?
It's interesting, right? Because what we once thought of as just fantasy might actually be a lot closer to reality than we realize. Quantum physics is showing us that what we perceive as reality is actually much more fluid and malleable than we used to think. Like our thoughts and beliefs can actually influence the behavior of matter at a subatomic level.
So what you're saying is that our imagination is like a bridge between the unseen world of energy and the physical world of form.
Exactly. It's how we take our inner vision and bring it into outward manifestation. And the more we practice using our imagination intentionally, the more powerful we become as creators.
That's so empowering. It suggests that we're not limited by our current circumstances, but rather by the boundaries of our own imagination.
Right. The universe is this field of infinite possibilities, and our imagination is the key to unlocking those possibilities.
I love that. It makes me think of all the great inventors and artists and visionaries throughout history. They didn't let their current circumstances limit their vision. They used their imagination to create something new, something better.
Exactly. And that same creative potential exists within each of us. It's just a matter of tapping into it.
It really makes you think, like, what will we choose to create? What kind of world do we want to bring into being?
Those are powerful questions, and I think we'll dive into that even deeper in the next part of our deep dive.
This is already blowing my mind.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see where we go next.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were getting pretty deep into this idea of shifting realities. Like, how much power do we actually have to shape our experience?
Yeah, it's definitely mind-bending stuff. So where do we even go from there?
Well, I think one question that often comes up is like, okay, if our reality is so fluid, why do some people seem to get stuck in those negative patterns?
Right. Like, if it's all about our beliefs and choices, why don't they just shift to a more positive reality?
It's tempting to think it's that simple, right? But I think what we have to remember is that we all have our own unique journey, our own timeline, and what might look negative from the outside could actually be a necessary part of someone's growth.
So it's less about judging and more about understanding that everyone is on their own path and maybe offering support where we can.
Exactly. And, this also brings up a really fascinating aspect of this material, which is the idea that even though we have these individual journeys, we're also all interconnected. Like we're subtly influencing each other's realities all the time.
Well, okay, now my mind is officially blown. So you're saying that our choices, like our energy, doesn't just affect our reality, it actually ripples out and affects everyone around us.
Think of it like dropping a pebble into a pond. The ripples spread out, affecting the entire surface of the water. It's like that with our energy. Our thoughts, our actions, they all create these ripples in what you could call the collective consciousness.
So basically, we're all co-creating reality together, whether we realize it or not.
Pretty much, yeah. Which is why, this idea of conscious choice becomes even more important. Like, if we want to contribute to a more positive world, it starts with each of us taking responsibility for our own energy.
So it's not just about focusing on our own individual happiness, but also recognizing how our choices impact everyone around us.
Exactly. It's like the more people choose love and kindness and compassion, the stronger those frequencies become in the collective. And then those frequencies start to create a more harmonious reality for everyone.
It's like that idea that we're all drops in the same ocean, right? What affects one of us affects all of us.
Precisely. And that brings us to another really interesting concept from the source material,
Mm-hmm.
this idea of hybridization.
Okay, hybridization. Break that down for me.
So it's basically the blending or merging of different energies, different consciousnesses.
Okay, so like instead of seeing ourselves as these separate individuals, it's more about recognizing how interconnected we all are and how that connection can create something new.
Yeah, exactly. It can apply to different aspects of ourselves too, like integrating our masculine and feminine energies or blending our logical mind with our intuition.
So it's about embracing all parts of ourselves, recognizing the unique gifts they bring to the table.
Exactly. And when we can do that, we become more whole, more balanced, and ultimately more powerful creators.
I like that. More powerful creators. It seems like a lot of these concepts really come back to that idea that we have this power within us to shape our reality.
Yeah, and with that power comes responsibility, right? Like we
Yeah.
have to be mindful of the choices we're making, the energy we're putting out into the world.
That makes sense. And speaking of responsibility, another concept that really jumped out at me was this idea of trusting the flow of life.
Oh, yeah, I love that one because it's so easy to get caught up in trying to control everything? But what if we just surrendered to the flow, trusted that there's this bigger intelligence at play, guiding us towards what's best for us?
I mean, it sounds amazing, but also a little scary, right? Like
Right.
letting go of that need to control can feel really vulnerable.
It definitely can be, but I think that's where faith comes in. Trusting that even when things feel uncertain, even when they don't go according to our plan, we're still being supported, we're still being guided.
So it's not about giving up control completely, but more about surrendering to something greater than ourselves.
Exactly. Recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that maybe that's okay. Like sometimes the most magical things happen when we let go and allow the universe to surprise us.
Okay, I'm
Oh.
starting to get it. But it's definitely a practice, right? Like learning to trust the flow takes time and effort.
Absolutely. It's like building a muscle. The more we practice surrendering, the easier it becomes. And I think things like meditation and spending time in nature can really help with that too. It's like they help us reconnect with that deeper wisdom within ourselves, the part of us that already knows how to trust.
Reminds me of that saying, leap in the net will appear. Like sometimes we just have to take that step of faith, even if we don't know exactly where we'll land.
Yes. And the universe has this amazing way of catching us, of supporting us, even when we feel like we're falling.
It makes me think of a story shared in the source material about someone who was struggling financially. They were so focused on their lack that they couldn't see all the opportunities right in front of them.
Right. It's like that old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes we're so focused on what's not working that we miss all the good that's already present in our lives.
So how do we shift out of that? Like, how do we start to see the forest instead of just the trees?
I think it starts with gratitude. Like consciously choosing to focus on what we're grateful for, even the small things. Because when we shift our focus to gratitude, we start to open ourselves up to receiving more abundance.
It's like we're telling the universe, hey, I appreciate what I have, and I'm open to receiving more.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the power of our imagination. Because when we combine gratitude with a clear vision of what we want to create, we become these unstoppable manifesting machines.
Wait, manifesting machines? That sounds kind of fun. Okay, tell me more about this.
So it's basically the idea that we can use our imagination to create our reality.
I mean, I've heard of that, but it always seemed kind of out there. Like, is it really possible to just think something into existence?
Well, quantum physics is showing us that our thoughts and beliefs actually have an impact on the physical world.
Whoa, okay, that is mind-blowing. So how do we actually do this? Like, how do we use our imagination to create the life we want?
It's about creating a clear vision of what you desire, feeling it as if it's already happening, and then taking inspired action towards that vision. It's about becoming a conscious creator, actively shaping your reality instead of just letting life happen to you.
So it's not just about wishing and hoping, but about taking action and aligning our actions with our vision.
Exactly. It's about becoming a powerful creator of your own experience.
I love that. Powerful creators, like we're all artists, painting our own masterpieces with our thoughts, beliefs, and actions.
And the universe is our canvas. Welcome back to our final segment of this deep dive. We were just discussing the power of imagination as this incredible tool for creation. But there's another piece to that puzzle.
Oh yeah, I know what you're going to say. It's not enough to just imagine it, right?
Right, it's about taking action too.
Bridging that gap between thought and action.
Exactly. It's like planting a seed. You can visualize the beautiful flower it's going to become, but you also have to nurture that seed, give it sunlight and water.
I like that analogy.
Hmm.
So it's not about forcing things to happen, but about creating the right conditions and then trusting the process.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where this idea of inspired action comes in. It's not just going through the motions, but taking those steps that feel aligned with our intuition, with our higher purpose.
Okay, so it's about listening to that inner voice that's like, hey, this feels right, even if it doesn't make logical sense.
Exactly. Have you ever had that experience where you take an action and it's like everything just clicks into place?
Oh yeah, totally. It's
Oh.
the best feeling. It's
Yeah.
like the universe is giving you a high five. Speaking of good vibes, another concept that really resonated with me was this idea of non-judgment.
Ah, yes, that's a big one. And it's definitely easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. Like, we live in a world that's constantly telling us to judge, to compare, to strive for perfection.
It's exhausting, right? Like, what if instead of trying to be perfect, we just focused on accepting ourselves and others exactly as we are?
That would be amazing, to let go of those harsh judgments and just embrace the perfectly imperfect nature of life.
It's a practice, for sure, but it's a powerful one. And it all comes back to this idea of conscious choice, which is really the heart of everything we've been talking about today.
Right, recognizing that we have the power to choose our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, and that those choices ultimately create the reality we experience.
We're not just passive observers in our lives, we're active creators.
It's both empowering and a little daunting at the same time. Like, wow, we have a lot of responsibility.
We do, but I think that's also what makes life so exciting. We have this incredible opportunity to create something meaningful, something beautiful.
So what's the takeaway message for our listeners? What can they do with all this information?
I think the most important thing is to remember that you are more powerful than you realize. You have the ability to shape your reality, to manifest your dreams, and to contribute to a more positive and harmonious world.
It all starts with that awareness, right? Becoming aware of our thoughts, our beliefs, and the choices we're making every day.
Exactly. And remembering that we're not alone on this journey. We have each other. We have the support of something greater than ourselves. And we have the power of our own imagination to guide us.
That's a beautiful message. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights with us. It's been an incredible journey.
It has. And thank you for being here, for diving deep with us.
To all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep creating the reality you desire.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.